For those that may be new to our community, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm PJ Connely. I'm currently the mayor of the city of Greenville. I'm originally from Wisconsin. I came here to play baseball at East Carolina University, graduated with a finance degree, ended up playing professional baseball, came back to Greenville and started up my own business, married my wife, and somehow I found myself into politics.
So my name is Liz Liles. I am the founder and chief executive officer of Daughters of Worth, a nonprofit organization that serves girls, young ladies, and women here in Pitt County throughout eastern North Carolina. I'm a graduate of Fayetteville State University. I hold an executive certificate in nonprofit leadership from Duke University. I'm pursuing my master's in social work from ECU. Those are all the formal answers. The real answer is I'm a woman who loves our city, who loves our community, who loves people. I'm a servant leader who is here and who desires every single day that I get up for my life to count and to matter for the good of all people.
What's your why? Why you do this? Why run for office in the middle of the world going upside down? Why would you want to lead this community to a better future?
That's a great question. I can tell you that running for mayor was nowhere on a vision board. It was certainly not something that I woke up to and thought, oh, let me come and run for office. 2020 changed my life. In the work with Daughters of Worth, and I refer that back to that because in the work that I do, these girls teach me. They bring me to a space where I am learning new experiences that otherwise I would not know. And in 2020, we had some girls who were graduating from high school who had no support, young ladies who are transitioning out of foster care, young ladies who are exiting trafficking situations, girls who have no family support. And they asked for our organization to come alongside of them and to help them navigate adulthood. They had no one there to help them figure out all the logistics of how do you get to work and transportation and where do you live. And so I began serving alongside of these girls. And the more that I began to do that work with these individual girls we were serving, I realized how difficult it is in order to generate independence and sustainability for yourself. I've been telling our girls for 7 years that you can create the tomorrow of your dreams by making positive, intentional decisions today. And yet, while I'm walking with them and making these phone calls and trying to assist them, I'm realizing that it is next to impossible to be able to find our young ladies a safe place to live that they can afford, trying to get jobs when you have a prostitution charge but you're actually a victim of trafficking and not having reentry opportunities, when you desperately want to go to work but you're not on that bus line and you can't get to your job or get home from your job and getting an Uber costs $40. I could talk for so long about my reasons why, but these girls opened my eyes to some of the barriers that are here. And I realized that in order to advocate not only for these specific girls we're serving, but an entire community who are experiencing the same barriers as these young ladies, then we have to have people in leadership who understands what these barriers are and who's willing to get their hands dirty, to get in the grit, and to make the necessary change. And so I'm here simply as a servant leader. I'm here as a woman who just loves our community, who loves the city, and who desperately wants to make certain that every single person has an equal opportunity to succeed and thrive. And I'm ready to do the work.
You know, I've always, my entire life, I always looked for, how I could give back, and I just never found the right niche. I never found the right thing that really impacted me. And when I got into public service, being an elected official, it just so happened that this was something that I felt comfortable with. This felt like something that I could give back. I could use some of my expertise to be able to help the city grow. I was blessed to be able to graduate from East Carolina University with a finance degree. I think that is one thing that I'm very lucky to have is a background in finance, because when you're jumping into a budget cycle and you realize that you have to allocate over $100 million of funding, it's good to have some type of background and know, how to appropriately budget those dollars, because when we think about it, those are hard-earned dollars from everybody in our community. You've got a business that you pay taxes for, and you want to make sure that it's being spent in the most appropriate way that we possibly can, because it's an investment. It's an investment into our community, and those dollars need to be invested in the most appropriate way possible.
Is Greenville a diverse community?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Greenville is extremely diverse. I think that was one of the reasons that I wanted to come to Greenville and stay in Greenville, is the fact that we have so many cultures. We're lucky enough to have a university here that supports and encourages people to understand different cultures. And I think that is one of the assets, the biggest assets that the city of Greenville has.
Is Greenville represented in the same diverse way at a local government level?
I think so. I mean, I really do. I think that we're making lots of strides. I think that, we're not where we need to be, but we've made a tremendous amount of strides. And I'll give you a good example of that in our city clerk's office. Valerie, who is our city clerk, she is a female minority, and both of her co-employees in that same department are minorities as well. And our city attorney, he's a minority. Our city manager, who is a female, would be classified as a minority. I think that we as a council have done everything we can, and we continue to work to make it as diverse as possible. But I do still think that there's work to be done. We as a community continue to look at diversity and understand the importance of it, and understand that everybody wants to feel welcome in our community. And I think that we need to continue to work on that.
We are a diverse community. We are a beautiful, diverse community. I have brothers and sisters of all colors and languages, and I can also tell you that a lot of my brothers and sisters do not feel seen. I can tell you that a lot of my brothers and sisters do not feel heard. I can tell you that a lot of my brothers and sisters do not feel safe. I can tell you that I have watched little girls that I serve come to me crying with tears pouring down their face, being told that when they get home today, their mama or their daddy is going to be deported, that they're not going to have a space to live. I have sat with young ladies who have received death threats over text message because of the color of their skin. We are a diverse city. We are a diverse community. And my platform is about building one Greenville. And that makes certain that we are building an intentional space that when people come into our city, you are seen, and you're loved, and you're valued, and you are worthy. And we are doing everything that we can to make certain that we're advocating for you. If you speak Spanish, then our documentation, our information that's coming out from the city should not just be provided in English, it needs to be provided in Spanish. We need to have a liaison that is going through to each community and saying, what does your community need? How can we best serve you? What are you not getting from us that you need? How can we help you? How can we serve you? How can we advocate for you? And that to me is what leadership is. An elected official is here to represent and serve the people. That is our goal. That is the why. If you are serving in this capacity, it's not to fill your own pocket. I'm not profiting off this opportunity. My friends are not profiting off this opportunity. I have my parents, my family. I grew up in a coach's home. My dad was a high school football coach, softball coach, athletic director, math teacher. My mom worked for the Board of Education. Before that, she was a bookkeeper. We are the working class. I'm not coming into this from a space where I'm going to be profiting off of decisions that are making. I am trying to enter into a space and in a position that is going to allow me to do the work that I have already been doing here in our community, serving, feeding, sheltering, clothing, health care, but doing that at a larger capacity so that we can ensure that every single person has an equal opportunity to succeed and thrive.
Some people in our community have asked this question, and they'll say that we are having traffic problems in Do you agree with that?
100%.
How would you mitigate some of those concerns or change the current situation?
So once again, we have a Horizons land use policy, and that policy was actually adopted by our city council, and it basically gives us a blueprint. It tells us where things should be developed. It tells us what should be commercial, what should be residential. It helps us to think through our development as a city and how the people are going to have the best quality of life, whether it's a business or whether it's a residential space. Yet, even though that has been adopted, our current council is making decisions that do not reflect that Horizons land use policy. And I refer back to that because if we have a structure in place that we know is data driven, that is going to help because it's going to impact your traffic. If we're building and developing in spaces and producing or building new residential spaces or new business spaces on land that's not intended for that use, you're going to see our roads take an impact for that. So I think a lot of it comes back to being wise, looking at being intentional in your growth and development, and making certain that the people are represented in those decisions, that we are not putting profit over the people in these decisions.
I need some specifics as far as you said the Horizon land use, but you also mentioned that current council might not be making decisions based on those policies. Do you have any specific or times that council has not put that land use policy to use?
There's quite a few of them, and you can actually go back through. I'll be glad to provide that data for you. You can actually look back and see. One of the ones that comes to mind right away is when we had land that was being developed on flood-prone property, and we are seeing a lot of that. Where there are specific decisions that are being made that even though the land use states that it is not wise to build or develop here, that they are choosing to make decisions to go against that policy, even though they adopted that Horizons land use policy back in 2016. I would need to I did not bring that data with me, but I would be more than glad to give you some examples of where, and of course, anybody can go back to the City Council notes, meeting notes, and agendas and actually view those recordings, and also see the meeting notes. And when the city staff, comes forward, and they will let the council know that if they continue to go in this direction, that these decisions are not in support of the land use policy that's in play.
As somebody that has lived in Chicago, Illinois for a year, that is a traffic problem there. That would take me 45 minutes to get from the baseball park to my house that I was renting at the time when I lived up there in college. We do have some issues with traffic. I think one of the things that most people complain the most about are potholes. We've got a tremendous amount of potholes in our community. That probably is the number one complaint that I get. In the city, when I first was elected on the city council, we were allocating about $500,000 of road repavement, and now we're doing close to $3 million annually on road repavement, which is a huge uptick. And that number needs to continue to go up as time goes on, and we'll continue to do that. So that is, in my opinion, an issue that we need to deal with. Another thing that we're working with is the NCDOT has several different projects throughout our community that have been delayed due to funding constraints, one of which is the Evans Street Old Tower Road project that has been delayed. We've also had the Fire Tower Road, Portertown Road project that's been delayed. I believe Allen Road, they're pushing it along at a relatively decent rate, I would say, but we're going to have to continue to keep our eye on that one. And then just recently, they announced this summer they're going to start on Dickinson Avenue. We're going to do that one, I think, block by block. So those are major things that are going to be happening, and that's going to help out with some of the traffic flow. But we've got to stay on the NCDOT and partner with them to make sure that we get those projects done. One that I really want to get done that we've been talking about ever since I was elected through the NCDOT is a traffic signalization program. We have allocated money for that. It's been sitting in the city's funds to have this done. It's through the NCDOT. It's their project. What it would do is it would synchronize all the lights, which would allow the flow of traffic throughout our community to go a lot more smooth than it does. Instead of people calling the mayor up saying that this traffic light's too short, it would automatically adjust it based off the flow of traffic.
What do you feel is more important for our city at this moment? Building new homes, and this is something that there was a lot of that in social media. There's been a lot of that. We keep developing. We keep doing this. There's new apartment buildings coming up. We have a lot of student housing, and I think the entire community has been very vocal about. Man, I think this administration under PJ, we have a lot of new developments. But what about the existing stuff? We continue to expand rather than utilizing our existing storefronts and homes. Upkeeping them, maintaining them, making some areas look better. We see the growth, we see the buildings going up, but what do you think is more important at this very moment? Continue to build apartment buildings, new homes, or maintaining what we have and developing what we have?
It's a multi-pronged approach, honestly. I think that we need to continue to do the building that we're doing, but on the same level, we also need to make sure that we're taking care of what we have currently here. One of the things that I'm most proud about is we had a meeting about a month ago to talk about our American Rescue Funds that the city of Greenville is going to get. And one of the things that we made the decision to do was to allocate $1.4 million towards home rehabilitations. That is extremely important because what that does is that allows homeowners to be able to stay in their houses, allows them to be able to get resources to be able to fix up their house. Maybe it's lead-based paint abatement, maybe it's a new HVAC unit, maybe it's a new roof, maybe it's painting, maybe it's new siding. Whatever the case is, it allows them to be able to stay in their house and it provides them the resources to be able to stay there. For us, it's important that they're able to stay in the property that they've been in maybe potentially 20, 30, 40 years, and then they're able to have those the necessary resources to be able to stay there. Another thing that we've done too is we partnered with some local developers with projects to be able to provide affordable housing in our community. Just recently we allocated $1 million of funding from the city of Greenville to a local developer here that is building affordable housing. They're going to build about 180 units. They're going to have 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. The nice thing about it is it's a lot cheaper to have a private developer build the product than to have the government come in there and build it. But also it provides us with additional housing for people in our community that may not be able to afford some of the new inventory that's coming in line. Because as well as I know, the cost of labor, the cost of materials continue to go up. So some of this new product that's coming into our community is not obtainable for individuals that are living on a fixed income. So when I say it's a multi-pronged approach, we've got to make sure that we're keeping up with some of the new stuff, but we also need to make sure that we're investing in the infrastructure that's already here in place right now.
So you talked about $1.4 million going towards helping people who live in our community within our city limits. Do you have any idea what part of towns that money will be going to, or is that more of a in the works?
Most of it's going to be in the West Greenville area. That is a identified area, census tract that the funds can be spent in. So it will help a lot of people in the West Greenville area.
I think that we have to start with the basics. I think we have to come back to the people. And so part of that looks like we have to start being transparent in this work. And so I would take it back, if it's okay, my answer would be a little bit different than both of those. I think for the basics, we have to get back to having integrity and transparency in the decisions that are being made. We have to look at the decisions that are being made and how it impacts all people. So if decisions are being made that do not represent all people and are not in the best interest of people, then we need to pause and look at those decisions and how we can do that differently. I do believe that we have existing structures that can be used. I want to see all of our city develop and grow, but it needs to be done in a way that's intentional, that's healthy, that benefits all people. And I think there's a lot of different avenues for how we can actually produce that and make certain that we are growing, we're thriving. But it all comes back, for me, to the people. We have to make certain that we are putting people first. People over profit, people over politics. At the end of the day, our people have to be seen, they have to be heard, they have to be respected, and they have to be advocated for. And so we really need to take about 5 steps backwards and get back in front of our people and figure out, what do our people need, how can we best serve, and what can we do to promote businesses, promote the people, promote housing, promote mobility options. I can't choose one over the other. It's about the people, and your people are going to have different needs.
So walk me through some of those avenues you're saying. There's several different avenues that we can go about it. And this question, it is so important to our city to understand whether we're going to continue to build, or we're going to start better utilizing all spaces. So I know it's a lot to answer, it's a lot to put into that.
Yes.
But if you only had those 2 options, expanding or building new things, what would you choose as a mayor, and if you find yourself to be elected, and you have to pick one over the other?
Sure. So I think we need to be good stewards of what we have. I think we have existing structures right now, homes right now, that are not being utilized, that can be used to serve people. One of the things that is part of my platform is our student living, and when you look at that space. So 5 years ago, there was actually a study that was created, that was done through the Kimley Horn consultant. Our city paid in order to have this study conducted, and the data concluded 5 years ago that we were already oversaturated in student living spaces, that the supply already exceeded the demand here. In December of 2021, the North Carolina Human Relations Commission put out a study that stated that in order for us to have affordable housing here, we would need a 75% increase of market rate housing in order to meet the needs of the people. So I believe that instead of expanding and developing new businesses or bringing new things in, we need to look at what we already have. We need to make certain it comes back once again to the people, and making certain that we have what we need to ensure that that our people are supported in their endeavors.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk business.
Yes.
As a business owner myself, it's important not only because I'm in business, but most of the people I deal with on a daily basis are people who have a lot of sweat equity in our community, and it's important for me to make sure their voices is heard.
Yes.
One of the strategic goals of our city council is to grow us, Greenville, as the Eastern North Carolina hub. Through being proactive in recruitment of business. So the question for you is, if elected as our next mayor, how would you make sure that continue not only to take place, but it gets expanded and grown into a more attractive Greenville for small businesses in our community, and to encourage people to fulfill their dreams of opening up their storefronts? And how do we attract more talent? How do we attract bigger companies into our community?
So I want to answer this in a couple of different spaces. Some of this I'm going to tap back into the original questions I answered. If you want to have employees that come in and businesses that come in, you have to have a space for them to live that they can afford. So in order for us to retain young professionals, in order for us to recruit businesses, in order for us to bring in new employees, we have to have safe housing that these folks can actually afford to live in. That's number one. You got to get back to the basics and taking care of your people. We also have to realize that we have a number of people who are looking for jobs that need access to transportation. And so we need to be aware of that need and working towards that. So I come back to the basics, because in order to have your folks show up to work, they got to have a way to get there. They got to have a safe space to live. Aside from that, We also have to have transparency in the work. So there are funds that are actually provided through our council. There are that are designated for certain tracks that can be used. And one of the things that I have learned is that not everybody has equal opportunity for this information. So I think it's really important that as we have small business owners, as we have emerging entrepreneurs, that we have a liaison who is working with the city, with the business owners, to help streamline this process. If you want to develop a business and bring that to this area, we should be helping you and giving you every single thing that you need to make the process easier. You should not have to try to pull all this data and information for yourself. And yet, what I'm finding from a lot of the conversations that I have held with business owners is that that is a component that we are currently lacking in our city. There's not someone there to help them navigate the next steps towards that growth. We also need to be intentional about making certain that we are bridging the gap once again with business owners and those who need employees and service providers, because your service providers are the ones who are working with your folks who need jobs and who understand those barriers. So what can we do as a city to make certain that the people here have access to the jobs? Being intentional with that decision, being intentional with information, transparency, working to bridge that gap. And I also believe it's important, I think collaboration, I think partnership, making certain that we are recruiting businesses that represent our core values, making certain that our city is not surprised by business endeavors that are being recruited in. When decisions are made behind closed doors, trust is lost. And that's one of the effects that we're seeing right now in our city, is that we have concern about some businesses that are being recruited in that are affecting certain populations when that community has not been aware of that industry until they actually show up with a full open house. So part of that is working together. That looks like bringing business owners together. I would love to have quarterly roundtables, and you bring your businesses together, and you have a forum, and you have a platform to hear from you. I'm not serving at Villa Verde. I have no idea what your day-to-day looks like. I'm not going to know what you need until you tell me. But it's my job to make certain that I'm serving you along with everyone else, and that you have access to what you need, and that I'm advocating for you as hard as I'm advocating for anybody else in the community, if that makes sense. And so a lot of this comes back to being intentional. It comes back to the people. It comes back to listening to you, and you tell me, you help me understand what you need, and then I'm going to come back and work for you so that we can make certain we're advocating for your best interest and for our city as a whole, that we're all working on the same page and we're not leaving the community out of the conversation. People just want to be included.
You know, I think one of the mistakes that a lot of communities make, and I hope we never do this, is forgetting the assets that we currently have here. I mean, we've got tremendous assets. Let's start off with East Carolina University, Vidant Medical Center, which is soon to be ECU Health, Pitt Community College. We have several large corporations that have called Greenville, North Carolina home, and then we have a tremendous amount of small businesses that call Greenville home. I think first and foremost, we've got to make sure that we're taking care of those businesses and those organizations that we currently have here, because a lot of the growth that we're going to continue to see is through those organizations, businesses that have already invested in our community. On the second side of that, we also need to make sure that we're continuing to recruit new businesses to come to our area, because Greenville's growth is not going to slow down anytime soon. We're continuing to see people have shown interest in our community. In 2020, I think it was 2021, Updater.com listed Greenville, North Carolina as the #1 relocation city per capita in the entire country. So, people have taken notice of Eastern North Carolina. They've taken notice of Greenville and the assets that we have. But we've got to make sure that we're continuing to take care of those people that have already invested in our community, while we also go out and recruit new businesses to come as well. And one thing I'm really proud about is the formation of the Greenville NC Alliance that was created a couple of years ago. It was a vision that we had to create a public-private partnership that would work hand in hand to be able to bring companies to our area and also retain those companies that have already invested here.
What are some of their accomplishments so far?
They've worked really hard to be able to bring new businesses in. We've seen a lot of business expansion lately. We've seen Thermo Fisher has been able to announce 500 new jobs, a $500 million expansion out there. We've seen Grover Gaming, a locally grown company, announce that they're going to have 400 jobs at their business. We've been able to see WorldCat, the boat manufacturer, open up a facility here in Greenville, and it sounds like they're doing really well based off the conversations that I've had with their leadership. So we're seeing a lot of new growth. Also, not to forget Victra. Victra has made a significant investment. They bought that new call center that used to house the Wells Fargo out there off of Thomas Langston Road, and they've got some very ambitious goals to hire tremendous amounts of people in our community, which is great.
As part of the COVID-19 pandemic recovery, what do you consider should be the priority for the $24.7 million in funds received through the American Rescue Plan Act?
We've got a tremendous amount of needs in our community. I think some of the ones that were identified is we had a lot of infrastructure that needed to be addressed. We've invested heavily in that. We've had a lot of different programs that we needed to make sure had funding available through the availability of those funds. So there's a lot of needs. I think that one of the most important things that we have to understand is that we've had a lot of feedback from citizens throughout the city. We identified what some of those ideas were for how we should invest those dollars, and the council was presented that information in an open meeting, and the number one thing was our infrastructure. They thought that we needed to invest heavily into that, and I think that the council at one of our most recent meetings was able to make allocations to be able to address some of those road projects, some of our stormwater projects that are severely in need in our community. We also had some people that had voiced an opinion that they wanted different entertainment opportunities as well. I will say that also that there was a first round of funding that was provided through the CARES Act, and the city of Greenville during the pandemic was able to allocate a significant amount of money towards small businesses, that small businesses were able to apply for funding. We also put a significant amount of money towards nonprofit organizations as well, and then we also put money towards rental assistance for those people that were struggling to be able to pay their rent. That first portion of funding for the CARES Act, we exhausted all the money for our small businesses. We only had 2 nonprofit organizations that applied for funding, and they were both funded. And then all of our money for the rental assistance was exhausted as well. So, there were a lot of questions. A lot of people said that we needed to spend more money in nonprofits. We needed to spend more money in small businesses. And the city has done a really good job with navigating that. The tough part about it is when you get $24.7 million dropped on your lap, what's the best way to spend it? We've got almost 100,000 people in our community, and each person's got a little bit different idea. We listened to the public. I think the most important thing was we had surveys done asking the public to find out where they felt we needed to spend the money, and they gave us direction. Staff gave us that feedback to let us know what people in our community were looking for, and then we made those decisions based off of their feedback. And I think, as an elected official, that's what you expect. You expect that, people in our community should have a voice. They should be able to express how they feel like that money is going to be invested in the community, and I think that we did a really good job with that.
There are a lot of needs that are here in our city. We have watched our homelessness rates increase. We have folks, so in case you're unaware, in 2020, and I love Community Crossroads, I think they do a wonderful job. Because of some of their guidelines and restrictions for how that has worked, anyone who is elderly, anyone who has children has not been available or has not been able to go into the shelter. So we have watched our homelessness rates just continue to increase. We have this is a burgeoning problem right now in our city, and trying to figure out where folks are going to go. I believe that needs to be addressed. I also have seen, if you have followed, we have watched our mental health increase the needs of our city, of our community. We have watched substance use increase. We have watched addiction skyrocket through our community. So I believe that with these, with the American Rescue Plan funding, we need to come back to the basics, and I believe that those dollars need to be allocated in a way that best represents the needs of the qualified census tracts. So if you have got areas that need infrastructure, such as north of the river, there have been some issues there. If we have, we need to be coming together to look at collectively as a city, what are the needs that we have in these qualified census tracts of these folks? What can we do to resolve these issues? That's what these dollars are there for. And so instead of me, Liz Liles, sitting here and telling you what I, Liz Liles, would like to have all of these funds allocated for, what I would say that we would need to do is look at the actual delegation for these funds, the actual qualified census tracts that these dollars were allocated for, and then we bring the people into the conversation. We look at the data of what we have, and then we address and list all of the needs. Okay, so you have north of the river, and they have these needs here. You have West Greenville, they have these needs here. You have these different areas, these different spaces. What are our most pressing issues that these dollars can help to stabilize these communities? What small businesses have been impacted? What small business owners have had to close their doors? What employees in our city need or are in disarray because of financial hardship and how they have experienced crisis? So I believe that, again, if elected, as an elected official, it's my job to advocate and represent the people. In order for us to utilize these dollars well and in the way that they're intended, we have to look at the data, we have to look at the QCT, and we have to look at the needs of that community. And then we collectively together, by the voices of the people leading that work and driving the decisions that are being made, we make decisions with those dollars that align with integrity, the way that these dollars were intended to use, and we make certain that we are doing that best work that benefits all people in those qualified census tracts. That's going to be in a way to utilize in a way that is going to set them up for success, not only for now, but also for the future.
The values of our city, city of Greenville, are as follow: integrity, respect, professionalism, fairness and equity, teamwork, accountability, and commitment to service and excellence. 2 questions.
Okay.
Are we living up to that today? And which of these values you feel is more important for the next or current mayor to possess in being the person in charge of our community?
I would offer that that we are not living up to those core values right now. And I offer that because of the stories that I hear, because of the things that I witness, because of what I am seeing taking place. I believe there's so many, kind of looking at your list of the values that you have listed, and I got to choose 2. Integrity and accountability have got to be among top. We have to be held accountable for our decisions. We have to have integrity in the decisions that we are making. At the end of the day, and you've heard me say this today, if the decisions that are being made by the city council are not in the best interest of all people and are not including people in the process, then those decisions are not being done with integrity. And if no one's asking the questions and saying, why are we making decisions to develop and build on land that we know is prone to flooding? Why are we making decisions to utilize funding that's been allocated by our federal government to assist our municipality in this COVID relief effort, but we are choosing to use it for a ballpark, or we're choosing to use this for recreational purposes when those are not what the funds were intended for? If we are intentionally leaving out business owners because of the color of their skin, and they are not able to receive access to the information that can help them support their businesses, then we are not doing that work well. And we have to have someone who's willing to come in and ask those hard questions. Is this decision going to benefit all people? Is this decision going to put marginalized people in further risk? Is everyone getting access to this same information? Is everyone being provided with an equal opportunity for success for their families, themselves, their business? If the answer is no, then we're not doing this work properly, and there's work to be done.
So you pointed out too, integrity and accountability, commitment to serve, and excellence. I need you to pick one that you feel is the most important to possess to the mayor of our community, our city, and why?
I'm going to come back to integrity. Because without the basis of integrity, you're not going to have respect. Without the basis of integrity, you're not going to have professionalism. Without integrity, you're not going to have fairness and equity. Without integrity, you're not going to have teamwork. Without integrity, you're not going to have accountability. It's the core fundamental. Integrity is when it's 10 o'clock at night and no one else is around, and I promised you that I was going to serve you, or I was going to show up and assist, or I have an opportunity. Am I making that decision even when no one else is around to hold me accountable for that? That's integrity. Integrity is doing the right thing for the good of all people, even when no one else is watching. If we don't have leaders who have integrity in this work, if we don't have leaders who are coming into this role as a servant leader, I use that term a lot, because I should not be asking you to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself. People need to trust our leadership. And if our city cannot trust our leadership, then we have an issue. And you're not going to see any of those other things play out.
I think you've got to possess all of them. I don't think you can just pick one. I think if we go back to the diversity and inclusion discussion, I think that you have to possess all of those qualities. I mean, I think for the city to move forward, you've got to have all of those. I think that that's kind of our mission, and as a city, we need to make sure that we're following that. I think the most important thing is that when we're making decisions, we're making these decisions for a vast group of people that live in our community, and they all have different backgrounds, they all have different needs, and we need to make sure that we're doing what's best for everyone. And sometimes people may not feel that way. Some people might think that you're only doing it for a certain group of people. But I will tell you, it is very difficult. Most people don't understand the pressure that you're under, when you're sitting on that dais and you're making decisions, and somebody comes to you and they want to do something in the community, and you need to make sure that you put in the time and the effort to make sure that you've researched it, that you understand what the implications are, how somebody could be negatively impacted. And I think a lot of that comes down to integrity. And I think the fact that, you need to possess all those qualities when you're making those decisions is extremely important,
So what would you say to people who claim some of these values during your administration, some of them are not being carried on?
Everybody's got their own opinion. Honestly, I mean, you can look at. We all have the right to have our own opinions, and I said that is one of the most amazing things about our country. Our country allows you to have a freedom of speech. You can come to the city council meetings. You can say whatever you want to. We have some people that come and say things that could potentially make somebody mad, but that is their God-given right, their ability to come and be able to voice their opinion. They may not agree with us, and that's what they're entitled to. But we're there to listen, and I think that is the most important thing, is to be able to understand that even though they may not think that we are listening to them, we really are, and we value the fact that they're providing us with the feedback that they do, and then we make the decisions based off of their feedback. And you can't make everyone happy. You do your best to, but ultimately you're elected to make the decisions for the city of Greenville, and not all the decisions are easy. I will tell you that. Some of the decisions that we've had to make over the years have been extremely difficult. That maybe a group or maybe somebody in our community might be impacted by it, and it can be a very tough decision. But I'm very thankful that we have done everything we possibly can to make sure that we're making those right decisions for our community.
What is your vision for the city of Greenville, both short term and long term? What do you see where we're headed? You have a pretty clear idea of where we're at. Mm-hmm. Where do you think we're headed?
I think the most important thing when you look at the city in general is, as we continue to grow, I think we've all seen the growth that's taken place. I've been here since 2004, and I can tell you that there's a vast difference between where we were then and where we are now. But I think the most important thing is making sure that we've got a solid foundation, and I think as the decisions that we make now are going to highly impact some of the things that happen 10 to 15 years from now. The decisions that we make, as far as investing in our infrastructure, investing in public safety, investing in quality of life, are extremely important, because those are going to impact our community 10 years from now. Some of the things that I've been able to accomplish and the council's been able to accomplish over the last couple terms, people won't see the fruits of those labor for another 10 to 15 years. So, some of the decisions that we make right now are extremely important, because they'll impact our community long term.
Long term. So that's where we're headed. Where do you think we're at?
I think Greenville is an amazing community right now. I think we've invested heavily into our community. I think you've seen we've gone from $500,000 invested into our infrastructure to nearly $3 million each year invested in it. We've lobbied to be able to get grants to be able to improve a lot of our roads, our sidewalks, our bike lanes, our greenway systems. And I think that you're starting to see a lot of that taking place. And I think people are starting to see that Greenville is becoming almost a metropolitan area here in eastern North Carolina. We have done a tremendous amount with economic development. We've seen a lot of new jobs that have come into our community. We're going to continue to try to embrace the current businesses that are there, because the most important thing that we have seen over the last several years is a lot of the job growth that we're seeing comes from businesses that are already here. So retaining and helping those businesses is extremely important. We continue to see the crime is dropping. We've got to continue to invest heavily into our public safety. I think that our Greenville Police Department has done a great job with the resources they have. We've done a lot of LED light conversions. We've done a lot of new cameras that have gone around throughout our community to make our community a lot safer. We partnered with the Sheriff's Department, and Vidin, I think, was a partner, and ECU, I think, was a partner as well, with our Shot Spotter program that identified anytime a shot was fired inside the city limits. So there's a lot of work that's being done right now to make sure that our community is prepared for that future growth.
How would you describe the financial outlook of our city? And what steps would you like to would you take to see and ensure the financial stability in the future of our city?
I'm going to come back to integrity. And one of these things that I think is really important for people to understand, and I'm going to use, for example, the American Rescue Plan funds. Those funds that were allocated by our federal government were given and trusted to our municipality for a specific purpose. There were qualified census tracts that basically sets up certain areas that we know are more marginalized. Those funds were to help be able to restore, to provide economic support to economically fragile areas who are already experiencing severe hardship. We know that the pandemic hit our community substantially hard. We saw we saw small businesses have to close. We watched families have to choose between the decision of paying for their rent or paying utilities. I bring this up because when those dollars came to our council, the council made decisions about using those funds in ways that were not the intended purpose. Those funds were designated to serve those who had been impacted by the pandemic. And that could be looked at from infrastructure, specifically for these communities. It could be looked at addressing homelessness that we saw skyrocket through that. It could be used towards health care. We even see north of the river does not even have a pharmacy. So many different issues that were here, and watching how some of the other cities in our state utilize those dollars and those funds. We did not make those same decisions. In fact, our council immediately wanted to take $10 million of that and put it into a Guy Smith Stadium. Now, I love baseball. My kid plays baseball, or he has. I'm very much a fan of athletics, but I also believe that we have to be intentional and have integrity with the dollars that we have. And so if we are going to be, as we're looking at our economic growth, we have to also make certain, once again, that we are utilizing funding in the way that it's intended and that it's best used for the benefit of all people.
When you speak about fragile pockets within our community, would you describe or point out specific areas in our community? Can you identify them?
So one of the first areas I would say two areas that immediately come to mind are West Greenville and north of the river. I hold so many different conversations with folks, and I can tell you that a lot of these individuals who are in these communities do not feel seen. They do not feel heard. They do not feel represented. I cannot tell you how many people are in my inbox and are calling me or texting me and saying, what are we going to do when the next flood comes? And I need to get to a pharmacy. I'm north of the river. I need to get to the pharmacy to pick up my medication. Or my grandmother is on this medication that she needs, and what happens when the next flood comes and we're not able to cross the river to get that medication? We want to have the same opportunities. We want to have access, but yet we're not seeing anyone actually even come in to hold conversations with us and to advocate for us. And so you've got two different specific areas that are here, but the reality is, across our city, you have folks who are struggling. You have folks who are simply struggling to make ends meet. They are still, even though the pandemic is over, as we're seeing as a community, I think we have to realize that a lot of people have not recovered. We still have people who are very sick. We still have people that are still sick with COVID right now. We have people who have experienced extreme traumatic loss and who are still trying to figure out how to get up the next day and take care of their families and themselves. We have a long way to go.
Is there areas that we're well off in our community?
Is there areas that what?
Are well off in our community that most of us can point out some of those areas, but do we have those areas in Greenville?
We do have those areas in Greenville.
Okay. Are you going to be a mayor for those as well?
Absolutely.
How?
Well, I can tell you that some of my best friends live in those areas. The same way I've already been doing the work. It's not, you've heard me say, probably, I'm sure you've heard me say, because you and I have had some conversations, I'm a both and kind of girl. When you're a servant leader, you love people. Mm-hmm. You're here to serve all people. People who are wealthy, people who have got this gift of financial wealth, that's a gift. That's not something to be shamed. That's not something to be looked down upon. So I believe that in the same way that you've got marginalized people who need to have a voice, it's also just as equally important to go and to sit with folks who have a different lived experience. Because the reality is, we're all people, right? We all have basic needs. At the end of the day, we all have a desire to be safe. We all have a desire to be sheltered. We all have a desire to be fed and clothed. We all have a desire to take care of our families and to be able to live the life that we desire for ourselves. It's going to look different for different people and different families. But part of this role is I'm here to serve and advocate for all people. So yes, I have got some of my dearest and best friends who live in, more of the luxurious spaces in our city. I also have dearest friends who are in the most marginalized spaces of our community. And I am just as comfortable as going and sitting and enjoying the friendship and sitting in the home of someone who has enjoyed and been blessed with prosperity as I am going to West Greenville or to the community shelter and sitting on the ground and playing with kids in the dirt. That's who I am. I love people. I think that we all want the same things in life. I think that we all want our city to be successful. I don't believe that you're going to find anybody who says, I don't want my city to thrive. We all want that. I just understand that some of us have got barriers and there are some gaps and disparities that are there that we as a community, as one Greenville means we're all working together for the same goal. We're all coming together and putting our brothers and sisters in the game and taking care of one another. And that for me is what this is all about. It's about all of us rising up together as one Greenville to ensure that every single person has the equal opportunity to make the best quality of life for themselves and for their families. That's why I'm here and that's what I'm advocating for.
How do we get those two communities to talk? And I want specifics. And because our role has been very simple. How do we unify our community, which is why we're doing this? How do we get those two completely separate Greenvilles to not only coexist, but to talk and do life with each other?
Such an important question. I think one of the key things, again, COVID opened my eyes to so much. People want to be seen and people want to be heard. And I believe it's important for you've got to have leadership who understands both sides. You may have a lived experience that looks like this, and you may have a lived experience that looks like this. And just because you've never experienced this or this person has never experienced this does not mean that one is not true or not valid or not real. It just means that this is my lived experience and this is what it has looked like. And this is my lived experience and this is what it has looked like. It looks like having hard conversations. It looks like coming together and saying, I'm not asking for you to put down your values. I'm not asking for you to put down, let's even say it, your politics, okay? Because people have got their opinions, they've got their politics. We're not even addressing that. What we are saying is, this has been your lived experience, this has been your lived experience. What are our end goals as a community? Well, we want to have a thriving city. We want to have a city that people want to come to. We want to have a city of belonging. We want to have a city that people come and feel loved and valued and seen, and that people have access to their essential needs, and that businesses can grow and thrive and have equal opportunity. So what collectively, from my lived experience and my lived experience, can we bring to the table? I think it takes having these conversations. I think it takes being intentional. I think it takes being a leader who's not afraid of hard conversations. And it also just comes back to heart. It comes back to, are we willing to rise up together and to be our brothers and sisters' keeper? Are we willing to humble ourselves? I think it takes humility to listen and to be able to learn from other people. And then to say, what can I bring from my lived experience to help make this better? What can I bring from my lived experience to make this better? How can we come together collectively and ensure that we're working towards the city that we all say that we want?
There's one word that keeps coming up within your administration, and I've asked several people that worked at the city level, and it seems like integrity is something that your administration pushes on. Do you feel, and it happens to be one of the city of Greenville's values, do you feel that you guys have lived up to a great level of integrity?
Absolutely. I definitely do.
Definitely do.
Yeah. Have
your administration been 100% transparent in everything that takes place and how it takes place in our community?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can say 100% we have. One of the things that people have said is that we've had backroom deals and all these different things that are taking place. That doesn't happen. The only thing that they could say that we've done is when we have closed sessions, when we do have to go into closed session, that is the only time that we don't do anything in the open public. And that's because we're talking about economic development projects that potentially could impact our community, and from the standpoint of privacy, we have to do that in closed session. But if any action's taken, it has to be done in an open session. So any of those discussions, so like if we have XYZ company that's interested in coming here and they want to talk to us about potentially, some type of job incentive grant or, some type of tax abatement or whatever type of incentive that they're asking for, we have to discuss that in a closed session meeting. And then if any action's taken, it has to be taken out in an open meeting. Every single one of our meetings is open to the general public. Every single one of our meetings is on GTV. It's recorded. Anybody can go back and look at any of our meetings that we've had in the past. The links are available on our website. Every one of our workshops that we've had has been televised, or it has been recorded and then uploaded to the internet as well. And so every discussion that we've ever had has been out in the open. So backroom deals and not being transparent is definitely not what we're doing. I think that has been a goal of mine from the get-go, from when I first was elected back in 2017 as the mayor. And we'll continue to strive that, because ultimately we're making decisions and we're representing the people of Greenville, and they need to know what's going on.
What do you think is the most important pressing issue? We just came out of the craziest time in the history of our existence, and when I mean that, I'm you, me, and our kids, our maybe grandparents. It's been crazy. What do you think is the pressing issue today in our community?
I would say there's a lot of issues. If I had to just pick one that I think goes across the entire board, is that there is a lack of transparency. There is a lack of integrity in the decisions that are being made. We have a lack of voices being represented. We have a number of people in our community right now who are struggling. We have families right now that are struggling to find a safe space to lay their heads at night. We have mamas who are struggling to put food on their tables. We have folks who are looking for job opportunities and who are trying to figure out next steps for how they can get that job and then how they can get to that position. And how to generate this sustainability and independence. We have business owners who are not being provided with resources that are available. There have been so many conversations that I have held with people over the last year, and I think at the end of the day, the biggest number one issue we have is that the playing field is not equal. We have got an opportunity in leadership through the city council to make certain that we are doing the very best that we can to serve our people. We have a remarkable opportunity and privilege, I believe, to be able to look at our city and to look at our entire community and to say, what are the needs that our people have? And what can we do to stand with and advocate for all people so that every single person has the equal opportunity to prosper, succeed, and thrive? And right now, that question, from my experience, is not being asked. And I believe that we need to have hard conversations. I believe that we need to have roundtable discussions. There needs to be collaborative partnerships. We need to be looking as a whole and what we can do to make certain that every single person has the best opportunity to provide for themselves and for their families. So lack of transparency, lack of integrity, and lack of representation for all people are what I believe are some of our key core issues right now that we are seeing in our city.
Day one in office, you happen to be elected as the next mayor of our city. What's the first course of action?
The first course of action? The first course of action, that's a great question. You know what? I was actually thinking about this the other day, and I don't know if this has ever been done. I'm so not a politician. That's the other piece of this. I'm learning as I go. But the other day I thought, someone asked me a question that I thought was so valid, and one of the questions was, how are you going to make certain that you are accessible and that you are in all areas of Greenville? And my first thought is, I want to have an office in every part of Greenville that people can, that you're not going to have to come, if you're living north of the river, that you're not going to have to come try to find me at City Hall. I want it to look very different. I want it to look, and maybe not even an office space, but to find a way to go back and talk to the people and figure out how can I best connect with you? Because the reality is, this whole platform is about serving people. You can't serve and represent people that you're not listening to. You can't serve and represent people that you're not accessible to. So instead of having, an office here in uptown Greenville that you have the chance to come to, that you're going to have to find transportation, how can I best serve you in your district? How can I best serve you where you're at? What does that need to look like? And so one of the first things I want to do is actually go out and have a forum with each different district and say, what is the best way? How can I serve you? And what is the best way for me to be accessible to you so that you can share your concerns and your thoughts and your feedback? That's number one. To be honest, some of the things on my One Greenville platform I've already started. And the reason for that is because this work is necessary. So if you're asking me, if you're waiting until May 18th to see if I'm going to actually do this work, the reality is I've already started. One of these initiatives is around second chance housing. I want to make certain that we have opportunities for folks who have experienced evictions, who have experienced poor credit history. I want to find landlords and property managers who are willing to come alongside of folks who need a second chance housing. Mm-hmm. So we're already working on that piece. I think that there's a lot of work to be done, but one of the first things I want to do is to find out the best way that I can get myself within that community and to find out how often the people want to have me there and what is the best location for me to be there so they can come and connect with me directly. I want to be approachable. I am approachable. This is who I am. I serve. And the work that I've been doing and the method in which I do it is not going to change. It's just going to be done at a larger capacity. So those are among two of the first things that will be happening immediately. And I would imagine as we get closer, that list is going to probably continue to expand as I have new ideas. But the reality is, Jay, I'm here to serve. And that's not going to... This title does not dictate if I'm going to serve. This title dictates the level and capacity of which I'm allowed to serve. So I'm going to do everything that I possibly can on my One Greenville initiative that this can take me, and if elected, it's just going to give me that full force and momentum to do it at full capacity. And if not, the work doesn't stop. It just means it looks different. But I'm here. I'm here to represent and serve people, and that's why I'm running.
Biggest accomplishment so far and your biggest regret?
Biggest accomplishment, I think that our city is in probably the best financial shape that we have ever been in. I think that the opportunities that are in front of us are immense because we have been able to get ourselves to the point where the city has got very little debt. We've invested heavily into our infrastructure, and it kind of goes back to one of my first statements, is that for you to be able to see good, sustainable growth, you have to have a good, solid platform of what you're building on. And I think that this council has really established that. I think that we have really focused heavily on investing into our community so that that growth can be sustainable, because from a long-term standpoint, the most important thing is if we're going to invest in our community, we've got to be able to show it. If other businesses want to come into our community, other people want to come into our community, it's going to be a hard sell when they come in and our streets are in disrepair. Our crime is running rampant, and we don't have jobs in our community for people to be able to live a good quality life. And so for us, I think we've worked very hard to get to that point. And one of the things that I think that I'm most proud of is we take this as a team effort. And I think that a lot of times politicians love to beat their chest and say, I did this, I did this. I didn't do anything. It was our team that did it, and that's not just the council, that's the city staff, that's our community in general. We all work together to get to what we were able to accomplish over the last several years. So I'm really excited about that. That's probably, when you look at what takes place sometimes on TV, what you see sometimes at the national level, what you see sometimes at the state level, it can be very combative, and it can be very aggressive towards one another. I haven't seen that here locally. I think that we've tried to focus and show everybody respect. Not everybody's going to agree with us all the time. There's always going to be people that are out there that saying that we're not doing a good job, or we're doing bad things in our community. And I'm willing to listen to that. I understand that, and I want to hear their perspective of why they think that. But I think that we've done a really good job with being able to keep peace in our community and keep people together, which I think is extremely important.
Biggest regret?
Biggest regret? I don't know if it's a regret, but I think one of the things that I struggle with sometimes is the pandemic slowed us down tremendously. We navigated through that. That was very difficult to navigate through. But one of the things that we had really tried to focus heavily on was being able to really boost up a lot of our entertainment options in our community. I was super excited. I think in 2019 we brought Parmalee here right before the ECU UNC game. We had about 7,500 people downtown for that concert, and I was like, this is just like the starting point for us, And then the winter comes. We get into 2019, I remember looking at the city manager, and I was like, this is going to be a great year. And then 3 months later, COVID-19 hits, and it slows everything down. People don't gather anymore. We don't have events, and a lot of those entertainment options kind of were put on the back burner. We're starting to see some new things that are happening right now, but I would love to be able to see more entertainment options for the community, because no matter how much we go ahead and recruit businesses and we try to bring new job opportunities to people, Greenville's got to be a good place to live too. It's got to have great entertainment opportunities. It has to have amenities that attract people here and stay here, because quite honestly, we've got a lot of competition. I mean, if you look over in the Triangle area, they've got a lot of things that are going on there. They've got a lot of concert venues that are going on there. We may or may not ever be able to compete with them, but we can darn sure try as much as we can.
Is there anything left that you want to let the public know? Some of those people that have moved in the last year and a half that had not had the chance to hear from you during the campaign, because we have a lot of people moving to town. What's left?
I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. Continuing what's been accomplished over the last 4+ years, I think, is extremely important. But also, we need to make sure that we're focusing on some of the new issues. Just like in business, you're well aware of this. Changes happen on a regular basis. You never know when a 100-year pandemic is going to start up. But we as a city need to continue to focus on what the essential needs are in our community, and those change on a regular basis. When I first got into it, crime was really big. Crime is still, a major issue that we deal with, but we've been very fortunate over the last several years to see a reduction in Part 1 crimes. We've seen a lot of investment that's taken place in our public safety. We've seen a tremendous amount of investment in our infrastructure over the last several years. We want to continue to do that, and that's not going to go away. No matter who is in the elected position, that's something that's going to have to continue to be invested in, because as we continue to grow and we see more people that are coming into our community on a regular basis, they're going to do more wear and tear on our streets. So we've got to make sure that we're continuing to increase those numbers on a regular basis. But, I think ultimately Greenville's got to be a fun place. Greenville's got to be a place where people want to come and they want to stay. When I first got elected, one of the things I had said was, you only get one first impression, right? And it better be a good one. So when people come in off of 264, or if they come in off of 33, 43, whatever direction that they come into our community, or 11, 13, I can keep going on and on, all the directions they come in. But, whatever direction they come in, we want to make sure that they see Greenville as a great community that they want to live. And I think that when I went to school here, I was a kid from Beloit, Wisconsin, 1,063 miles away from here. I had no intentions on making Greenville, North Carolina my home. I had no idea what I was going to do. I thought I was going to be a Major League Baseball player traveling around the country. But when I was playing my professional career, and going around to different communities throughout the entire country, I knew that I wanted Greenville to be my home. I knew that it was a place that I wanted to raise a family. I knew I wanted to own a business here. And sure enough, several years later, I guess I found myself as an elected official here, representing the city. So Greenville's a great place. And I think what makes Greenville such a great place are the people. They embraced me when I came here in 2004 and played baseball. The entire time I was there, and then even when I was done with my playing career, it was always a welcoming area. I always enjoyed coming back and seeing all the people, because it was just a place that I felt welcomed. And I think we want to continue that. We want people in our community, no matter if they're college students, no matter if they're aging adults, no matter if they're young kids, we want them to think that Greenville's a great place that they're welcome to be in.
To my 17-year-old son or my 78-year-old neighbor, why are you the right person for this job?
I am the right person for this job because I have spent the last 15 years serving our communities. I have served as the executive director at the Blind Center, which was primarily your, of course, visually impaired blind, many of them elderly folks. I have served children and youth. At the end of the day, regardless of how old you are, regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of the language you speak, you have to have someone who cares. You have to have someone who is willing to come to where you are, who loves people, who has... I have one agenda in this, Jay. One agenda. And that one agenda is that through my service, the lives of people get better. That's my whole heart. That's why I'm running. I want the lives of people to get better because I have had the opportunity to serve them. Right now, I'm able to serve at a small capacity. Our organization, just over the last year, has personally invested over $65,000 in emergency sheltering needs. I'm the one who shows up with law enforcement and helps young ladies exit traffickers. I have stood face to face with gang members, traffickers, murderers, abusers, neglectors, pedophiles. I'm not afraid of long hours. I'm not afraid of gritty work. I'm not afraid of asking hard questions. I'm not afraid of going up into a space and helping a girl and her baby get into my car and being followed by a trafficker to help her get into safety and shelter. I have personally funded through Daughters of Worth, making certain over $10,000 in utilities, $10,000 in food, $5,000 in health care needs. I'm the right person to do this job because I understand the needs that we have in our community. I understand that our community needs for their voice to be listened to. I understand that we need representation who's going to show up in the dark and hard spaces that some people are frankly afraid to go to or simply will not go to because it's not in the right neighborhood. I'm not that person. I'm here to serve. And if you're wanting someone who's going to show up and listen to you and advocate for you, and even though it may not be my lived experience, I'm going to learn from your lived experience. You need leadership who understands your lived experience and who's able to take that back to the council and have the decisions that are made there benefit all people. Again, I'm not profiting from this at all. This is a servant leader capacity. And I'm here and ready and willing, the same way I've been doing this work for 15 years, showing up to love people, to serve people, and to represent and to advocate. It's just doing this at a larger level and removing the barriers so that we can become one Greenville, where everybody's lives get better.
You know, I think I've got a really good beat on the pulse of what's going on in our community. I feel like we've done a tremendous job being able to keep our community moving forward. This progress has taken a long time to get to where we're at right now. I think we've seen incredible growth in our city. I think we're seeing a lot of new doors that have been opened. I think a lot of new opportunities for people. We've invested tremendously in our community over the last several years. I think you're starting to see some of the assets and some of the hard work that has taken place over the last 5 to 7 years starting to come to fruition right now. And I think that as time goes on, you'll start to see some more of that. You know, we're really excited to be able to stand up there and cut the ribbon over at the 10th Street Connector project. It was exciting to be able to open up the Southwest Bypass project. That, you know, those two projects alone are going to be instrumental to the growth of our community. I'm excited for us to finish up the Build Grant project. We went up to Washington, D.C. I want to say it was our 6th or 7th time lobbying for that, and we were successful with doing it. We brought back $15 million to be able to reconstruct all of West 5th Street, add greenway extensions, add multi-use paths to it. You know, we've seen a lot of growth that's taken place, and you know, I think that this council has worked very hard to make sure that we're working together, and we're making sure that we're investing in our entire community, not just one section of our community. It's in our entire community because it's important that we put resources everywhere because the citizens expect that.